Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on day 2 of SCSP's AI Expo for National Competitiveness. I know that it's been a really exciting 2 days, and the fun continues even through the afternoon. So thank you so much for joining us. I am really excited to have a conversation about a topic very near and dear to many of us thinking about winning the national security competition, and that is our ability to bring technologists into government. Public service is critical, and being able to recruit the right talent with the right skills at the right time for public service is a key part of that. So I am really looking forward to this discussion today with some leading change agents in this space who are actually not just studying the problem, but actually doing, implementing actual change and leading the charge on how we can more effectively bring technologists into the public arena. So I'm going to quickly just run through the panelists, but I'm going to ask them to start answering with the first question by giving a little bit of their background and how they got to where they are today instead of reading bios. So first, we've got Jennifer Hay, the Director of Defense Digital Service. We've got Rachel Dodell, the co-founder and CEO of Coding It Forward, a fantastic organization. We've got Michael Boyce, who is joining us just 2 weeks into this new role as the Director of the Department of Homeland Security AI Corps. And last but absolutely not least, joining us virtually. Hi, Kyleigh. So good to see you. We have Kyleigh Russ here, who is a senior advisor for OPM, who has been leading and overseeing a lot of the implementation of the new AI executive order when it comes to AI talent. So I'm going to start with the first question, and I'm hoping that, and sorry, I have to use my phone. I lost my paper earlier today. Please do share your background as you answer. You're each working in different ways to bring technologists into government. What are your lessons learned so far? What's working?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hay, the Director of the Defense Digital Service. DDS essentially almost exclusively hires private sector technologists into the government to work on Department of Defense problems. In my background, I actually spent most of my career inside the Department of Defense, and a few years ago went into the private sector, and then decided I wanted to come back to work on these types of problems, bringing in private sector best practices into the government. In terms of what's working when it comes to hiring private sector technologists, I would say mission. The private sector is able to pay better and has better benefits, is a more easy working environment. Oftentimes, the computers always work when you're working for a private sector company, and it's not always the case inside DoD. But really, we're looking for people that are driven by mission. They want to be able to give back to their country. And I do think that is a strong motivating factor in bringing in a lot of these people who really want to solve hard problems. And the government often has problems that just can't be solved or are too hard to solve. And they have the expertise to be able to help us move forward and be able to deliver quality products to, in my case, the warfighter, in the rest of the government, to the American people. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Dodell. I am the co-founder of Coding It Forward. We are a nonprofit organization that brings early career talent into public service careers. I founded this organization when I was actually a college student who was studying computer science and wanted to work for the government, but couldn't find a pathway in. And so I decided to help start this summer fellowship program called the Coding It Forward Fellowship. That was about 7 years ago now, and we've heard from over 11,000 early career technologists who have applied to our program, and have placed over 600 of them at 14 different federal agencies, as well as city and state governments across the country. I think what is working well, to Jennifer's point, is mission. Early career individuals are particularly attracted to working for the government because they're excited about the impact and the scale of the work that they can do, particularly so early on in their careers. And I also think fellowship models are an incredibly effective way to expose new talent to this space. For us, it's just 10 weeks long, and that really plants the seed for folks. Over 50% of our alumni actually now work in government or public service, which is an incredible amount of people, over 300 individuals. And it's also inspired other fellowship programs to launch, like the U.S. Digital Corps, which my co-founder, Chris, now leads as deputy director. So I'm really excited to see that ripple effect continue post-fellowship and be able to plant the seeds for so many folks to work in public service so early on in their careers.
Is this, oh, great. Hi, everyone. Michael Boyce. I'm the director of the DHS AI Corps. We'll go into that in a second, but I actually want to, could people raise hands if you're a current or previous federal government employee? I'm just curious how many people here know about it. Okay. And then do we have any folks here who are trying to get into the federal government or looking for a position if you want to identify yourself as such? Great. I just want to have a sense of how jargony I should be, frankly. So first of all, I'm really excited to be here. You all, some of the folks I'm on the stage with or virtually with are, to be totally over the top about this, true American heroes. I don't know if Rachel, she's being, 11,000 to place 600. That's a less than 10%. That's like a 5% rate. And as someone who brought on these fellows before, let me tell you, the next 5% are just as incredible as the 5% that we're taking. So the DHS AI Corps, I'm as mentioned, 2.5 weeks into it, but it is the largest AI talent-focused hiring effort in response to the recent AI executive order from the Biden-Harris administration. I think I have the largest civilian federal AI team in the government, but right now you are looking at that team, but folks are coming on quite soon. And what I will say here is, the idea here really is we were talking about AI. Everyone's very excited about AI. I had the opportunity to be at the White House where I was involved in some of the writing of the AI executive order. But from my perspective, now is the moment for implementation, bringing in really talented folks to partner with really talented civil servants to make sure that we can carry out this policy and begin to iterate on it, begin to think about what's working and what's not. And I can share, just as a talking point before handing over to Kyleigh, who's another American hero, we've received, since launching in February, over 5,000 applications for these 50 positions, which at this point I'm just not surprised about. People want these jobs so much, and I think we should own it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. And hello, everyone. I will warn you that I can't see, so I'm just looking at myself. So if there are reactions, I don't know about them. But hi, all. I'm Kyleigh Russ. I am a senior advisor in the Office of the Director of the Office of Personnel Management. Quite a mouthful. I'm not sure how many people raised their hand when Michael asked the question, but we are the kind of HR and talent arm of the federal government. And I'm actually I joined OPM as an IPA, or Intergovernmental Personnel Act appointment, from a company that I co-founded called Govern for America, which is a nonprofit that builds diverse next generation talent primarily at the state level. In my role here at OPM, I have been working on all things AI and tech talent, in addition to some early career work. And that has included things like the Tech to Gov initiative that the federal government has undertaken, hence where the title of this came from, amongst other things like the AI talent surge that we'll talk about today. I do want to, and in answering Diana's question, I do want to double down on what others have said, that we win on mission. So we know that when we tell the story of systemic impact that people can have if they join us, we have been able to bring in some incredible talent despite some very real challenges that we face that I know we'll talk about later in this panel. And as Michael just mentioned, they've gotten these incredible applicants under Tech to Gov, which is kind of this hiring initiative that OPM has partnered with some external nonprofits on, to bring in external tech talent, including AI talent, we have seen a massive uptake and interest in the number of people who want to come in actively. At the most recent event that we held last month, almost 2,000 people registered to come talk to our the agencies that are interested in hiring. And that's, again, despite some of the very real challenges. And we have seen that what works is when we can tell the story in a compelling way about what people can come in and do on day one to push our country forward and really make systemic impact.
Thank you so much, Kyleigh. Well said, and well said by my fellow panelists. Let's just jump right into it. So I think there's a perception, and maybe it's the world's worst kept secret, but there is this perception that people do not want to come into government service. And we've talked a little bit about this, Michael, in another conversation, but what we really see is quite the opposite when there's opportunity, is that there's just a really large mismatch problem with people who want to serve with the opportunities in government and being able to find and make it down through the funnel, the whole hiring process that is. And so I'm really wondering, what if it's not a lack of interest, then what do you think are the main issues with recruiting technologists into public service? How much of an issue is compensation versus some of the other challenges? Let's go down the line.
I'd say for us, it's being able to reach the technologists that we're looking for, highlighting once we open their eyes that this is an opportunity for you, but being able to do that recruiting to get to the people that we're looking for. DDS exclusively hires from the private sector, and we're looking for product managers, UX, UI design and researchers, as well as software engineers from iconic tech companies as well as startups. But non-traditional defense companies is who we want to target. We don't want people coming in. We will, but we'll hire people that have a military background or a Department of Defense background. But we really want to bring in that new perspective to DoD problems, and being able to find them getting the department to be able to do that outreach where those people are looking for jobs is actually one of our hardest problems in being able to find the people we're looking for.
I think we're fortunate that recruiting has not been a challenge for us. As I mentioned, 11,000 students. That's a lot of applications. I think as Michael did the math on stage, it's less than a 2% acceptance rate, which is pretty wild. I think for us, compensation is one of the primary issues. Unfortunately, when folks are turning down our job offers, it is usually because they have a competing offer for higher pay. And we already pay above minimum wage. We pay above what federal internships offer. But unfortunately, that is a real reality of this work, particularly if we want to bring in a diverse workforce. We have a lot of first generation and low income students that we work with. We want to make sure they are part of our programs. And unfortunately, pay is a real barrier to getting these folks into the workforce. The second thing for us, though, is I think communication and timelines. We are fortunate in the sense that we circumvent the federal hiring process. All of our fellows come into the government as contractors, so they actually don't have to go through USA Jobs. So we've actually designed a very user-friendly application process, very streamlined, very easy. You upload a resume, a few short answer questions, and that works incredibly well for us. But once we start working with our government partners, unfortunately, time to hire is a real challenge. We open our applications in October to compete with the private sector opportunities that are out there with other technology companies, internships, et cetera. And by the time January rolls around, we lose an incredible number of applicants because they've already accepted offers at other companies. So I think it's a real loss, unfortunately, but it's something that, folks are constrained on and something that we all need to work on in order to make sure we're capturing talent when they're available.
There's a lot to respond to there. I think it's very interesting on the compensation, and I can see how for early career folks it'd be more of a motivating factor. I'm usually hiring at the top of the range, and I actually make a really explicit effort to tell people how much they will make what is the range, and indicate that in many cases we've been successful at, I can't promise folks the range, but I can say that we've been successful in the past at getting people fully compensated in that range. And, at the top end of some of these ranges, 180, 190, in service certain benefits, perhaps even going over 200, people are often pleasantly surprised, has been my experience, to hear that. Now, of course, if you're making $1 million, going to 200,000 or 180 is a lot less money. The other way I've been framing it is this, and it's been I found it to be fairly successful. It is, if you would like to be in the 1% of richest Americans, do not come work for the federal government. If you would like to be in the top 10 to 5%, we can work with that. And I think when people recalibrate the top line number being, it's almost a status or are you valuing me piece. And I found, at least at the range that I'm working in, once I remind them that a congressperson makes $174,000 a year, that is a pretty helpful way of describing it. Now, of course, if people have education they're paying for, mortgages or things like that, yes, we won't be able to compete if they're assuming that their lifestyle will be at a significantly higher salary. But I'll be honest, that's not normally, they're not going to come to us in the first place. That's not the target audience. And I frankly, with rare exception, don't really need those folks. There's so much demand that at least at the top end, I'm not seeing salary as big an obstacle as other critical things that, Kyleigh has heard an earful from me on how we give clear sort of guidance to be able to recruit, how we describe our positions and give good information about what the positions are, and then of course that pipeline from once you've applied to have clear communication and a clear process to actually start. To me, are far bigger factors, at least at the range that I'm working on, than just kind of this top line salary number. And frankly, in my world, I wish people would focus on it a little bit less, because I think it could distract from the real issues.
Yeah, I would largely agree with what Michael just said. Compensation certainly plays a role here as a challenge, but we have seen over and over again that people actually are willing to come in, and we're seeing these application numbers in very high volumes. As just another example, under the recent executive order, OPM opened a what's called pooled hiring action, which is essentially a way for the government to post a data scientist job once, and instead of an applicant having to apply to 20 different postings at 20 different agencies, they apply to one position, and they have an opportunity to be selected by a number of different agencies who are hiring from that for that position. And we had a massive turnout, huge interest in this data scientist role, and we went through the whole hiring process and have 180 people who are available for agencies to hire. So like, we know that and they know the pay, it's public, and so we know that pay does play some role. But in my mind, there are two really big challenges here. One is the long and confusing hiring process that generally takes a toll on our ability to convert people who are interested in joining. We can't expect people to wait months and months and months for a job offer to go out when they're going through internal hiring processes. And we are pushing actively for changes like that pooled hiring that I just mentioned that will reduce the time to hire, but we have a ways to go in trying to compete in that arena with the private sector. And then the other one is actually, I would say, like more of a baseline challenge, which is that technical roles across government need to be updated to better reflect modern skill sets. And moreover, we really need to move towards skills-based hiring processes that allow people with from different backgrounds to come into government if they have the right skills, regardless of how they got those skills. And we are also working on that. Last week, our acting director announced that we are going to be redoing the 2210 series, which is the federal IT series, to better align to skills-based hiring practices and principles. So there are some kind of fundamental baseline challenges that we're working to address, and then there are things like that we need to change our tech titles to be a little bit more industry friendly that we're also working on. But those present real challenges.
Thanks, Kyleigh. And I actually am going to ask you a follow-up question to that, because it really hits to the point of some of the where the rubber meets the road, that glue that is talent acquisition, the recruiting, onboarding, hiring process. And there really is this idea of, oh, it's such a challenge, we can't get the talent we need. And I think there's a lot of frustration that you hear some federal employers saying, but then when you actually look under the hood, you see, in fact, that there is a supply. It's just not never making it through to the other side. And I think it is that funnel that gets squeezed. So I'm wondering if you're seeing some variation across agencies, in terms of how they're able to navigate this process when it comes to technical talent, in terms of their ability and willingness to use direct hiring authorities and pooled hiring and other flexibilities that are out there, but may not be taken up at the same rate.
Yeah, agencies are all over the place in terms of each of the individual types of hiring innovations that we are making available or are already available to agencies are being picked up at vastly different rates. Some agencies are doing these pulled hiring actions on their own, and they are sharing within their own departments lists of candidates that are available that they can hire immediately, which reduces time to hire. And other agencies have not done them at all. And so there is a huge variety, and some of that comes down to the HR workforce and like a real serious need to invest in the HR workforce, do some retraining, reorientation to like what are some of these modern best practices across government. And some of it comes down to do people, hiring managers, HR, leadership, even know about these kind of allowable flexibilities? And I think the answer in some cases is no. So part of it is a communication challenge, and part of it is an uptake and capacity challenge.
Thanks, I agree. And I think that's something that we've been hearing a lot about. And it really is about bringing everyone along together to say, how can we meet some of the challenges of today in a new way? And especially then when you're talking about skills-based hiring, that's another piece of this conversation. I'm really curious, Jen, DDS has been pretty effective in its ability to attract and recruit and onboard technical talent. What are your lessons learned and secrets there?
I think it is finding what those flexible hiring authorities are and using them. Going back to everything that we've all said is that, jobs on USA Jobs are very rigid. They're not tech friendly. But what we do is we have found flexible hiring authorities, and then we hire everybody on as a digital service expert. And each individual, though, is expected to have a certain skill set that falls into one of our three guilds: the product management, UX, UI, design and research, as well as software engineering. And we use that direct hire authority to bring people on quickly. And we also, with our direct hire authority, we're not advertising on USA Jobs. We use our own website. We go to conferences like this, as well as other just not affiliated with the government conferences, to do some of that outreach to the community that we're looking for. And then we leverage our networks. We're constantly working through our networks to find individuals that we really want to do. But it is that flexibility with the hiring authorities that we found that allows us to bring in the talent that we're looking for into job codes that don't exist inside the government today.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece of this. And Rachel, you see this question from both sides, from the supply side and the demand side. I'm really curious, from where you sit, how have you been able to make the value proposition to potential talent to come into these roles? And then on the other side, how has your experience been getting agencies on board with the Coding It Forward fellows and placement? What has that experience been like?
Yeah, I think on the supply side or the student side, stability is actually one of the number one things that Gen Z cares about when looking for a job. I think the tech layoffs that have happened over the last few years have really scared a lot of folks coming out of school who are looking for stability right off the bat with their careers. And that's a huge sell that we're able to make to them that, frankly, some other companies can't promise that they'll have a job in 6 months. So for a lot of folks, that's number one. That's what they're looking for. I think number two, it's been mentioned multiple times, mission, mission, mission. Folks are really excited about the scale of work that they can do, particularly so early in their careers. Oftentimes internships in big tech, they'll have a very small role and a very small team doing something that frankly might not affect end users at the same kind of scale. And so we've had folks who have worked on so many different websites like vote.gov, where folks can go actively find voting information. Our fellows have been responsible for updating several citizen-facing features on that. So to be able to say, hey, I just spent 10 weeks in my internship working on something that is going to help millions of people is a pretty outsized impact that is frankly just not available elsewhere. I think on the other side, working with our federal agency partners, folks are really excited to connect with early career talent. We have been surprised because I think it's less than 5% of the federal IT workforce is under the age of 30, which is an alarming number for different reasons. But folks really want to pay it forward to the next generation. And when they hear that we have so many folks who are interested in doing this work, it's not a hard argument to make that they should hire them. Instead, it's really just making sure that they have the time and the resources available when they are often already under a lot of pressure to do great work to make sure that they can mentor our fellows.
And thank you. And Michael, the question that immediately comes to the top of mind when you say you have 5,000 applications for 50 spots is, so now what? How are you going to select? What are you looking for in a technologist? And then as you are going through that selection process, how are you going to make the experience of bringing them on a pleasant one?
Thanks. I mean, it's a really critical question. Before diving in, I also just want to speak to, because since we have so many federal government employees in the staff, I will say as someone who has brought on civic digital fellows before, it is a teeny procurement action in the grand scheme of things and brings on some of the most exceptional. If you've ever had a contractor who you were less than thrilled with, I guarantee you that will not be your experience going through the CDF program, for those who are not familiar with it. And it's frankly budget dust compared to what I'm sure some of you guys are working with. Also, I'll just really quickly, and I'm sure I'll get to the question, but Kyleigh, I was smiling when you said, when you talked about some more tech-friendly titles there for our 2210 series. Our process, and I think that this is what's really critical, and again, I'm talking to the federal government colleagues here, we're hearing much more about skills-based hiring, and I think my reaction to it as a long-serving federal government employee is, well, that has always been my experience, that you always had the 1 year of experience that you could substitute for a degree to apply to many general schedule positions. And I think the other piece that we're trying to get out goes beyond that. And that certainly there's a variety of agencies. And I think it's not just focused on kind of standard GS positions and other specific agency practices. But what I'll go further to say is we're also talking about the SME-driven process. And this gets back to how we're doing the hiring, where normally in the federal government process, right, it's people apply, HR reviews them for qualification, a certificate is issued, and then it's a black box, and then the hiring manager on the other side finds out who the qualified people are. What a lot of this is about is a new process that the call to action is, if you are not talking to your HR about this, please talk to your HR about it. In policy, they have to start doing this, which is before that certificate is issued, we have multiple rounds of interviews with folks for tech talent positions, such that by the time that list of qualified folks gets to me, the people that I, as the boss, am allowed to hire, we've already done a really thorough job of evaluating their skill set and their qualifications for the position. I think the real challenge here is this is different than what we've done in many cases in federal government hiring. It is more labor intensive, and you do have to find these subject matter experts who are willing to volunteer their time. But I will say, every time I've gone through one of these SME processes, especially for technical roles, the results speak for themselves. I mean, some of the strongest folks I've hired, especially if you're looking outside of internal talent, are through this process. But I think that'll be a big change, but that's something we're really focused on in this process. Now, from the success perspective, I know I've been going on for way too long, so I'll be brief here. Look, I'm hiring amazingly talented people, some former federal government employees, some who've been in and out of federal government, some who are new. These are incredible professionals, and I plan to work with them to figure out how they can succeed, as opposed to just sort of determining in a vacuum. One thing I will say that I'm really trying to do is, as I go around, we're doing a whole big engagement strategy right now at DHS, as these first folks come on, is I'm also asking all of my peers, even folks who are ranked higher than me, can you give me a list of 3 to 5 people in your office that when my staff hit the ground, I can give them as potential people that they can just reach out to, so that they, from week 1, week 2, have a network of people throughout the federal government, throughout the department, that they can talk to rely on as buddies, to learn more about how things work. Because I do find that when people first come in, they get quickly siloed in where they are. And so one of the tactics I'm thinking about is, how can I help someone get involved and get spun up, but also start to build out their network, which I've personally found to be very valuable in my own ability to succeed in the federal government. And people have been very responsive. I mean, people have loved that suggestion and have been very, very into it. So that's one of the many tactics I think we're trying to do here with the new group.
But that actually raises a great point, and what I was going to ask Kyleigh and then come back to Jen about is this idea of understanding your audience. Know your audience. Who are you trying to recruit and why? And how are they going to be set for success on day one? And Kyleigh, I'm curious to know, and maybe the AI executive order and the talent search provided some insight on this, but similar to the varying levels of maturity of some of the HR community's willingness or, flex on hiring, what about the level of maturity of agencies to understand what their workforce requirements actually are? And where does OPM's role in that?
It's a great question. One that we are very much grappling with. We're actually undergoing human capital reviews right now, which is basically when OPM goes and talks to every single one of the CFO Act agencies about certain topics, and AI is one of the topics this year, and the AI workforce in particular. And again, agencies are all over the place in terms of their readiness to hire. Some agencies have been doing this for years. They're doing it. They're going to keep doing it. They're picking up the pace of and obviously the type of talent that they're able to recruit, given the advancements in the last year. And then other agencies are self-recognizing, like, hey, we're not even really ready to bring in AI talent because our data shops and our data strategy and our underlying tech and some of those more enabling features, functions are not in a place where if we bring in an ML specialist, they're going to come in and they're going to be kind of waiting around because they don't have access to data that in a clean way that they're going to be able to use on day one. So I think there's a recognition from some agencies that, hey, we're not quite there yet. We need to make some more backbone investment. And then there's agencies that are way ahead of the curve. And then obviously everything in between. OPM's role has largely been, I would say to date, split into three different roles. One as really a strategic thought partner, and that's something we're trying to move more into, especially in this space, as agencies think about that strategic workforce planning to actively design AI and tech talent teams capable of safely utilizing this talent and new technology. And so that's a lane where we have been participating as part of the AI and Tech Talent Task Force that was stood up under the executive order to really try to address and work with agencies to try to address some of those workforce planning challenges. And we're producing material in that vein. The second way that OPM is trying to play in this space in an active way is through policy guidance. We have put out a ton over the last 6 months
from flexibilities. We've heard people here talk about the direct hire. OPM has released a ton of direct hire authorities that we believe agencies will take advantage of for AI. We've released Schedule AR authority that allows people to hire non-technical talent that will help them institute and do the directives that are in the executive order. So we've done some making things easier. We've also put out guidance around pay flexibility. And hey, don't forget that you can offer 25% signing bonuses essentially in XYZ circumstances without any approval from OPM. So we are trying to put out guidance about what already exists and of course new guidance as well. And then finally, the third place that OPM is really playing here is really just trying to push these innovative practices that are applicable government-wide and for all positions, but really trying to hang on to this moment where there is an interest in AI and tech hiring in particular to say, do SMEQA, the process that Michael was talking about, where you bring in subject matter expertise, like do that. We want you to be doing that. That is not only allowed, but OPM encourages the use of this type of process. Do participate in pooled hiring action. So kind of these innovative hiring practices that we are trying to push across the board. We're trying to take advantage of this moment where there is this acute interest in tech and AI talent to say, hey, this is really applicable for this talent too. So we're trying to kind of hit a lot of the various authorities that we have and work with agencies, frankly, in ways that we really haven't done in the past.
That's great. Please continue the charge on that front. Jen, curious from where you sit in having teams that deploy across DoD, when we were talking about the DoD can't access technical talent, what do you see?
I would say that yes, DoD does struggle with accessing technical talent. And one of the things that I would like to see the department do is stand up their own digital services in each of the agencies, because using the best practices that we've identified. As I like to tell everybody, how DDS has built itself with how we hire, who we hire, as well as the non-traditional tools that we have access to. We didn't do it with magic. Like, we used the DoD resources and rules and procurement mechanisms available to us to be able to build this program that is definitely repeatable across the department. But it is really hard for the department to change its culture in the way it looks at problems and the way it identifies problems. The idea of human-centered design is a relatively new concept to the department. The idea, oftentimes when we come into an agency to work on one of their problems and we ask to talk to the user, they send us to the SES that's in charge of the function, and we say, no, we want to talk to the GS5 or the E4 that's sitting at the computer that's actually doing the work. To be able to understand how to solve their problem. So all of these things are relatively new to the department. And so we also, that when we do the hiring, that is made clear to everybody throughout our hiring. The individuals go through a pretty extensive interview process to onboard at DDS. And a lot of that is to lower expectations. That when you go into an agency, you're going to be educating them on modern product development processes and digital service solutions. And so we want people that are resilient. We also want people inside DDS that are curious, that not only do they come in with their expertise that they have built in the private sector, but we also want them to learn about how to solve new problems and learn new skills as they go into these problems. So we are looking for a very specific type of person. But we're like I said, it's not magic. We're using all of the resources and tools that the department and OPM have made available to us to be able to build a team that is definitely repeatable across the government.
Thanks. I'm going to do, in the interest of time, one final round robin question. And if there's anything you want to add on from our discussion today, or something you really want the audience to take home, please do. My round robin question gets at the topic of AI literacy. How much has it been a barrier and a challenge in your work in trying to recruit technologists into government? on the flip side, having agencies with a workforce that may not be appreciative, either have some data and AI literacy or appreciate how important it is, and what do you think should be done about it? And let's start with Michael and work our way back, and then end with Kyleigh.
It's a great question. I'm trying to think about how much of a barrier it's been. Look, you have a range of folks, and in fact, I've had a chance to address some of our components at their leadership meetings, where it was too much fun. We did a poll of all the SES in one of the components about their experiences on AI. Asked them everything from, do you think your employees use it today, to do you know what generative AI is? And that was a great experience. I think more and more executives are tracking that this AI thing is here, but there's a huge range. And in fact, I think in one of the components we talked to, we had them sort of click their favorite, emotion. And, number one was curious, and number two, and one component that will not be named was, I forget what it was, anxious or cautious or something like that. And so it was really interesting to see how there's just this big range of experience. Look, the message that I've been saying, though, is this is, in my very humble opinion, and probably anyone at this conference likely agrees, going to be like the internet and cell phones. If you were told right when they came out that this will be part of your everyday, right when they were coming out, you would have wanted to make sure you are preparing yourself for that. And so that's been my message really to these departments. But folks are very excited, at least from my perspective, to get this expertise in, because they've recognized it's something that they have to address. I think the challenge with certain folks will be figuring out how to direct my team in the right way. And I'm lucky that it seems like I'll have a great team to be able to do that with. So thank you, everyone.
I think seconding Michael, it's been a range for us. We've been very fortunate to work since 2017 with many statistical agencies, which are at the forefront of this work. The U.S. Census Bureau is our first ever partner, and their team of statisticians and data scientists have been doing AI work for long before this executive order took place, and have been really incredible mentors to our fellows. On the other hand, we do work with some agencies where we get back project descriptions and they're asking for coding languages that have not been taught in computer science programs in over 25 years. So it is quite frankly a range. And on that end of sort of education, it's really about helping them understand where the tech workforce is presently and how they can use those skills. Our team works hand in hand with all of our partners to support that work. And I think education is a major piece. Yeah.
So for our team, we focus on digital solutions. So before you even get to AI, you need a quality digital solution that collects the data. And that is where my team really shines. But I would say in terms of AI education, it's really with our DoD partners that struggle with understanding AI. And when they come to us with a problem and they say, I want AI to solve my problem, our answer is often, no, what you're really asking for is automation. And that's where you need DDS. And we'll come in and help you with that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kyleigh.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that point particularly that I do think that there's generally a pretty good recognition across the board from my seat, especially in these human capital reviews, when an agency is not ready to use this talent or to use this new tool. I think that the next step from, okay, we're not ready, is what do you need to do to get ready, and to actually and who are the talent in some of those enabling functions and the backbone functions that you need to be investing in parallel or like slightly ahead of being ready to invest in the actual AI talent. And I think like one of the ways that we've been addressing that with candidates on the outside is just like trying to be really honest and having them go in eyes wide open that you're going to have to do some amount of kind of like educating and getting up to speed. You're probably not going to be able to hit the ground running in some of these places. And of course, that's not true. That's not true everywhere. So I would say less a barrier, more just being realistic about what folks are getting into.
No, that's right. Thank you so much. And we could go on all day, but unfortunately our time is up. Please join me in thanking our fantastic panel. Thank you very, very much for sharing your insights with us today.